Like, now, at first blush, we would listen to that and we would say that those notes are wrong. Now, if you've been with me for a while and watched my lessons, you know that I am not a fan of traditional right and wrong. Reason for that is that it really depends on a myriad of scenarios. And let's talk about 4 of those scenarios right now. The first is style, okay? So if I was going to be playing like, you know, if I wanted to do something like a nice, sweet ballad in which a little baby could go to sleep, like that would be fine, right? That makes sense. But if I do, right? Or like there, it's like, oh, it's incongruent and it just doesn't match, all right? Like I'm not going to get a baby to go to sleep playing something like that, all right? So stylistically, depending on the style that we're playing, there may be tension that is going to be inappropriate or not the best choice, okay? The other thing, the mood that I'm trying to set, all right? So like, again, if I'm trying to set that real kind of chilled out mood of like, getting, a baby to go to sleep, then I'm not going to play like this kind of stuff, right? However, if I'm doing the score for a movie and there's a chase scene or something, I might actually use something like that, or like that kind of stuff, like a lot of tension there. Surroundings. If you're playing in a nice restaurant, which everyone's eating dinner, it's a soft, soft surroundings and whatnot, then you're probably not going to play, like stuff like that. That would just be, again, incongruent with the situation. And then last of all, your intended use. And this is where it's like if you're intending to use the music for something like a film score versus, playing in a restaurant, those are 2 completely separate intended uses. So basically what I'm saying to you is that when you look at improvisation, the very first thing that you really want to think about and really start to get a sense of is what is your interpretation of tension versus wrong notes. So in other words, like if I'm playing something like, if I'm doing this, that's tension is fine to me. I don't mind that. I might use that as an introduction. Use it as an introduction to My Funny Valentine, playing that pedal on the 5 with a lot of tension there, right? So you want to start to figure out, like, what tension are you comfortable with? Does that sound good to your ears or not? If it doesn't sound good to your ears, then obviously you don't use it. You move on, you do something different, right? But it doesn't make it wrong, right? And when you're learning to improvise, especially at a more advanced level, like the sense of like, oh, what you played was right or wrong, it really gets very gray. And I would suggest that you start to think more in terms of good and bad choices, all right? Or tense and not tense choices. Okay, so moving on, the first thing we need to do is we need to establish our harmony. So anytime we're going to improvise, we want to make sure that the harmony is clearly outlined, all right? Because, now, at first you might be thinking, okay, that means I played the correct scale that goes along with the chord, right? Now, I'm not going to get into chord scale theory, at least not too much today, because I talk about that in many other lessons, but let's just real quickly talk about what I mean by chord scale theory. Basically, if I see something like this, a C minor 7 chord, I know that I could play what? I could play like my C natural minor scale, okay? I could also do Dorian as well, right? It really depends upon, like if I'm in the key of B flat here, all right, so with that C minor 7 to F7, all right, what kind of makes sense that that C minor 7 would be a Dorian scale, all right? This is a 2 chord in the key of B flat. And when I move to the F7 chord, it could be a myriad of scales there. I could use pentatonic scales, I could use my altered scale, I could use my Mixolydian scale, right? So chord scale harmony and chord scale theory basically means that here's a chord and then here is a list of scales that usually sound good while playing this chord, okay? Now, the problem that I have with chord scale harmony and chord scale theory is that a lot of times those scales also then have these avoid notes in them, all right? And so then you're learning the notes of a scale, but then it says, well, play the scale, but don't play these notes, all right? And then it's only listing out like maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 scales depending on the chord, okay? And I remember looking at music books and I'd see all these chords and then the scales that would go along with those chords. And it's not a bad way to start. It's not a bad concept to know, but the problem is I feel as though it's extremely limiting because basically what you're saying is, here's this chord, these are your choices. And in some ways that's good, limiting choices, right? But in other ways, especially in music and art, you can really get stuck into thinking that these are your only choices, right? And you can also get stuck into not really thinking about what the harmony is that you're playing, and instead thinking about what the scale is, or the scale is that you should be playing along with that harmony, okay? All right, so anyway, that's basically chord scale theory. What I want to talk about now is your launch and target notes, okay? So now a launch note is, this is where you're launching your improvisation off of, okay? So this is the first note of your lick, of your phrase. And then a target note is, okay, well, where are you getting to? So you can see this phrase marking here, see that phrase marking, like that arc right there, okay? This is just a short little lick, short little phrase. So now if I play this, listen to this, listen to what happens when I start and end on a non-chord tone, okay? So A is not a chord tone, and then G here is not a chord tone. A would be the 6th on a C minor 7 chord, G would be the 9th on an F7 chord, right? So take a listen to what that sounds like. Yeah, well, trying to get rid of that. There we go. Here we go. I'm sorry. What am I doing? Okay. So I have. I'm going to play it just like this as well, just so you can hear that root motion as well. Okay. Now, it doesn't sound bad, right? You know, it doesn't sound terrible. But now listen to this example here instead. This one is. Let's see, can I get that? Oh, okay, let's see if I can get that just a little bit bigger. There we go. This one is starting and ending on a chord tone. So take a listen to this one. Sorry, let me do that again. Now, so here's the first example. And the next example. Now, what do you hear between those two examples, all right? So you probably hear that the first one sounds okay, but it doesn't really establish the harmony, okay? Right? Whereas this one, the second one, starting on the chord tone, really establishes that harmony. So here I'm starting on the 5th of the chord, and then I'm moving to the root of the chord. 5th of the chord to the root of the chord, okay? So by starting and ending on that chord tone, it's a great way of establishing that harmony. So what we want to do is we want to really think about our launch notes and our target notes. Where are we starting a phrase and where are we ending that phrase? Remember, the phrase could be also 2 measures long, you know, or 3 measures long, right? It really might be like this long arcing line that you finally end on. Right? But you want to think about where are you starting your lines and where are you ending your lines, okay? So now, it is so important, the starting and ending, that there are actually scales that were developed specifically to help with this, all right? And 2 of them here are the dominant bebop scale and the major bebop scale. So now, in a typical Mixolydian scale, This isn't in the music, so just watch me play this. In a typical Mixolydian scale, I'm just going to play C7 down here, root 3/7, okay? If I just come down, this is my Mixolydian scale. So if I come down in eighth notes, I get 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now pay particular attention to beats 1,